fully engage and benefit from the exchanges this morning. We ask the audience to please observe a few rules of virtual etiquette. Please keep your cameras and microphones switched off at all times. Should you wish to submit a question, you are welcome to type it out in the Q&A box at any time throughout the session. Time permitting, our moderator will select 2 or 3 questions for the panelists, and you are encouraged to upvote questions using the emojis in the Q&A box. It may help our moderator identify the popular and pressing questions. To seek blessings for our event this morning, may I now invite Mr. Ahmad Ismail to lead us in the recitation of Dua.
Thank you, Dr. Eric. Without further ado, I would like to invite our brothers and sisters Muslim to recite the Dua. And for the non-Muslim colleague, you may recite your prayers in your own language. Without further ado, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. We gather here today to express gratitude upon your greatest gift toward us in conjunction with our PDX Alliance Digital Transformation for Capital Project Reality of a Testy webinar. We ask for your help and guidance. Ya Allah, kindly guide us, strength and courage to face the struggle to find and gain knowledge. Kindly bestow blessing and physical and spiritual health, fitness of mind, peace of mind, strength of spirit. Ya Allah, grant strength to us to continue to serve for people, society, nation, and religion. Wassallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Back to you, MC.
Thank you, Mr. Ahmad Ismail. Next, please join me to welcome Associate Professor Technologies Dr. Wessam Salah Alalul from UTP to share an overview of the PDX Alliance. Over to you, Dr. Wessam.
Thank you, Dr. Arif. Assalamu alaikum and good morning, everyone. We are here today to share with you about our PDX Alliance project delivery digital transformation overview. Thank you, please. Thanks, Rina. So this PDX Alliance started as a joint industry collaboration, was driven by PETRONAS, originally started and focused on the AWB and BBM. And this one was focusing on the Malaysian oil and gas and service provider. After that, we moved toward this PDX Alliance, which is driven by the academia and focusing on the transformation of the project delivery for all the projects. It was started in 2022 and moved toward 2023 onward. 2023, 2024, which is the initialization stage. And stage 2, which is more toward the collaboration between 2024 to 2025. The collaboration toward the standardization and the education, which is mainly the training and the research and the development. After this, it will be the 2026, which is mainly the expansion of the alliance, which is the optimizing and the performance expansion. Next, Rina, please. For this PDX Alliance, we are looking into the support system between all the owner, operators, as well as the contractor, ABCC contractors. Our main aim is to achieve the effective digital transformation and implementation for all the project. To achieve this aim, we are focusing into 3 main objectives. The first one is to be a platform for collaboration and information sharing in the project digital delivery and digital transformation PDX. for all the energy sector and ecosystem for Malaysia and beyond. The second objective is to facilitate the collective advancement journey of the Alliance members in the project digital transformation. And this one mainly approach based on the best practices and the lesson learned from all the members who have started already this digital transformation. The third objective is to exchange the ideas and the research development toward enhance the productivity, efficiency, and to maximize the value for the overall ecosystem. By these three objectives, we believe our main effective digital transformation of all the implementation in all project delivery will be achieved. Next, Rina, please. For the digital transformation, we are looking into our project digital control tower, which is looking to the stage life cycle between project engineering until the project execution. It is consist of 4 main pillars. The first one is the project delivery digital ecosystem, where all of the things will be under digitalized material, document, 3D modeling, which will be all accessible by all the stakeholders. The second pillar, which is mainly focusing on the smart project site, which is mainly looking into the automated of the construction site monitoring. The third one, which is the construction-based engineering. Mainly here we are focusing into advanced work packaging, start with end on mind. The third one, which is the industry collaboration and the standardization, which is the main aim where we will be getting everybody to a standard approach to get this digital transformation. By doing this, we are looking to 100% quality and HSE, 15% productivity improvement, and 10% schedule improvement. Next, Rina. Okay, in this digital transformation, globally, we are looking to the CII, Construction Industry Institute, where they have this model between collaboration, academia, and industry. The academia by them is University of Texas at Austin, as well as by all the oil and gas project stakeholders over there. Regionally, they have this project management digital transformation, BMDX, as a community of practice for Asia Pacific, which is led by JGC company from Japan. Here in Malaysia, we are trying to do our own project delivery digital transformation, which is PDX Alliance. From the academia side, UTB is covering, and UTB will be the platform and the one-stop center for all the knowledge about the project delivery and the digital transformation. From the industry side will be mainly the main operator in Malaysia and PETRONAS, as well as together with all the EBCC contractors and the service providers under MOGEC. I think this is the overall idea about our PDX Alliance. I would like also to encourage all of the members to join us as part of the working committee or as part of the leadership council for this PDX Alliance to shape the future of the project delivery for energy project. Thank you very much, and pass back to you, Dr. Arik.
Thank you, Dr. Wessam. Now we come to our main event. It is my great pleasure to introduce our moderator for this morning. Mr. Stanislav, or popularly known as Stas, is an engagement manager at Mckinsey & Company based in Jakarta, Indonesia. He has over 20 years of experience in the oil and gas industry in a variety of consulting, project management, and engineering roles, ranging from E&C transformation, EPC, offshore capital projects, and CapEx optimizations for diverse clients in Southeast Asia, Russia, the Middle East. Stas holds a master's in mechanical engineering from the University of Warwick, as well as programming and networking professional higher education from the University of Latvia. Please join me to give a very warm virtual welcome to Stas to introduce our distinguished panelists and kickstart the much-awaited discussion. Stas, the floor is yours.
Yeah, Dr. Ho, thank you for the introduction, and thanks again for inviting me to moderate this session. It's a real pleasure to be here with you. Warm welcome to everyone who's dialing in for this session, and of course, our panelists themselves. The theme for today is digital transformations and capital projects. Are they a myth or a reality? And just before I introduce our panelists, I'd like to just share two facts that I think majority of the people will already know and majority of the people will agree on. Number one is that oil and gas industry has generally been fairly slow in terms of the rate of digitization. There's definitely a lot of solutions on the market, and it's difficult to imagine running a modern capital project without some of them. But at the same time, we've not seen dramatic increases in productivity like what we've seen in other industries like manufacturing, telecommunications, finance, etc. So we're still facing a lot of the same issues with cost and schedule overruns, quality issues, etc. And the second fact is that a lot of global companies, including some of the oil and gas players, have announced that they are embarking on digital transformations, and some of them have seen results, some tangible results, but also a lot of the transformations fall short of expectations. And generally, I think quite a sad statistic, but 70% or 2/3 of all transformations will fail to deliver on the targets set. And this happens across all the industries. It's not really unique to oil and gas alone. So what I'm trying to say by this is, in combination, these facts just mean one thing. The opportunity to get this right is huge. If oil and gas industry manages to reach half or even a quarter of the productivity boosts that we've seen in other industries, the value unlocked for both the operators and the contractors is going to be tremendous. So with this context and framing, and without further ado, I would like to introduce our panelists for today. Our panelist number one, Mr. Prakash Kumar, is the GM and the head of NervCentre at PETRONAS. NervCentre is an outfit that leads a lot of the digital initiatives at PETRONAS, including digital product and solution build and development. So Prakash will have quite a number of stories that he can share on the initiatives that range from maybe some of the more simple workflow digitization initiatives to the more aspirational use cases like advanced analytics, AI, digital twins, etc. Our second panelist, Dr. Fadzil Hassan, currently serves as the Deputy Vice Chancellor for Research, Innovation and Commercialization at UTP. He's got a wealth of experience in research and academia, with a particular interest in artificial intelligence, computer science, and electronics. And he's actively involved in international research on these topics with some of the leading universities around the world, and has authored more than 100 publications in this space. And finally, our third panelist for today, Abd Rashid Sidek, is the president of the Malaysian Oil, Gas and Energy Engineering Council, or MOGEC. He's a professional engineer with the Board of Engineers Malaysia, a fellow with the Institute of Engineers Malaysia, and also serves on the boards of several private companies and nonprofits. Over the past 4 decades in the industry, Abd has been involved in pretty much every stage of capital projects imaginable, including design, execution, and operations. And while on that journey, has certainly seen the industry itself go through a significant transformation. So please welcome our panelists, and I would like to move into the first round of today's discussion. Now, if we zoom into the Malaysian context, Prakash, maybe if I can start with you with the first question. As I already mentioned, PETRONAS is doing a lot in the digital space, perhaps without necessarily calling it a digital transformation, but there's certainly a lot of initiatives going on. So can you please share a little bit about what are the main drivers for this innovation at PETRONAS, and also give a few examples of the solutions or technologies that you have deployed on capital projects and the impact and results that you have seen?
Great, Stas. Thank you so much. Am I clear? Just checking, doing a sound check.
Yes, can hear you well, Prakash.
All right, excellent. Good question. It's about digital transformation, and maybe it's not about digital transformation. Let me begin by saying this. I probably have about 3 points that I want to talk about. First, I don't like the phrase digital transformation. So let me be a bit controversial over here. I don't like the phrase digital transformation because it puts the wrong focus in place. I still use the phrase digital transformation. I don't believe that it's about digital transformation. I think it's about business transformation. In fact, I know it's about business transformation. It's not about digital transformation. I rather like the phrase, it's not very sexy, but it's business transformation enabled by digital. And why do I say that? You brought up a very interesting statistics. You said 70% of digital transformations end up in failure. I've seen statistics from Forbes that takes that number up to 95%. So here's a danger, right? When you begin a digital transformation, the chances are very high that you will end up in failure. But you find it less so when you talk about business transformation. And so here's the thing that I want to bring in. Let's be clear about what we are trying to do with digital transformation. Ultimately, we want to increase shareholder value. We want to continue to grow, be more resilient, adaptable, invest in our company, invest back in our people, which is all business metrics. Now, you talk about business metrics within the context of capital projects, you obviously will end up with those classic metrics, right? Costs and schedule and quality, but you can talk about resiliency, you can talk about standardization, risk management. All of these are the critical metrics that impact capital projects. So first point is, it's not really about digital transformation, it's about business transformation enabled by digital. Second point is that when we talk about business transformation, we need to hit the right metrics that impacts shareholder value, impacts growth of the company. When you then come down from the strategic to the tactical, and then you're now at the operational level and say, okay, what can I do to support business transformation? And can I use digital in some way to aid that process? That's the right question that you have to ask. We've made a lot of mistakes. I'll tell you, in PETRONAS, we've spent a lot of money, we've tried a couple of things, and we finally reached a point where we think we've got it right. The two areas in the space of business transformation enabled by digital transformation, whichever way you want to call it. The first thing is to do with data. And the second thing is to do with innovation in work processes. The project space is data scarce, it's data poor. If you take a look at the operational space, in PETRONAS, we generate about 300 billion data points every single day. We log about 5 billion of them, we use about 10% of them. In the capital project space, we're very data poor. We're document rich, but data poor. And it's a problem when you have scarcity of data, because it's that often quoted statement that if you don't measure it, it's very difficult to improve it. So one of the things that we've been doing over the last 2 years has been to actually collect as much data, clean it up, make it visible so that engineering and construction progress becomes transparent and visible to the people who actually need to take action. The second thing is about innovation. Innovation in work process. Capital projects is, you have to complete a project within a certain specified period of time. You have to do purchasing, get all the right equipment, materials on site, get the resources, the trades people who need to be there to actually get that job done within a constrained and confined period of time. That implies, by definition, that you need to have the right work processes in place, right? And so innovation over here will talk about work processes. It's influenced by data, but it's the work processes. So we're very, very strong about bringing in work processes like advanced work packaging, right? Which was you know, it's been used in the shipbuilding industries for ages. How you build a ship, you carve it out into small little bite-sized pieces, and then you start building those little pieces and then bring them together and then connect that up. And then you have production line mechanisms that actually allow you to actually implement that with a level of rigor and consistency in the quality, and that comes out of that becomes consistent. It improves efficiency at the fabrication yard. It improves the output, improves the quality. So work processes are something that we are also focused on. So these two areas with packaging and production management, we really focus on these two areas, which actually help our capital project space. In doing so, we have built a command center. We've spent 2 years trying to improve data transparency within the project space. So all of these things are stuff that we're doing in order to, number one, drive project metrics, which is actually driving business transformation enabled by digital. That's my comment, Stas, on that first question.
Thank you, Prakash. I think I really like your point about the business transformation as a priority and digital only coming as an enabler rather than being the ultimate goal of the transformation itself. Maybe, Chirashid, given your involvement with the contractor ecosystem in Malaysia, which includes both the large international companies as well as some of the smaller local contractors, has the journey or the priorities been similar to what Prakash just mentioned, or do you see any differences in the contractor ecosystem? And you'll have to unmute.
Yeah. Okay. Let me try to answer that from my personal perspective. But first of all, once again, thank you, MOGEC and PDX Alliance, for inviting me to be one of the panelists in today's webinar. And it's a privilege to be on the same panel with Mr. Prakash, Kumar, and Dr. Muhammad Fadzil. So we, MOGEC, currently have about 75 plus member companies. So our core focus, as our name signifies, engineering and activities supporting it. Most MOGEC members are also MOGEC members, so we work together very closely. So I will frame my discussion based on engineering. Engineering is always at the core of any capital development, and in the context of engineering design leading to EPCC projects. And when I say engineering, it covers all disciplines: process, mechanical, piping, electrical and instrumentation, control, civil and structure. And when I refer to EPCC, it implies a flow from engineering to procurement to construction, which means it involves fabrication and installation to commissioning, and finally handing over to the owner in the best way possible, and hopefully within the budget and within the schedule already allocated. So it's a very wide topic to cover. A little bit of history in retrospect. So Malaysia is fortunate, probably about 4.5 decades ago, someone in authority, I believe some senior figure in PETRONAS, insisted that all international oil companies operating in our country, in Malaysia, in that time, must carry out the detailed engineering design locally. So they have to set up office. So very quickly, names like Technip, Aker, Wally, Brown and Root, McDermott, MMC Oil and Gas, Sime Engineering, Toyo Engineering, to name a few, started their operations here. So it covers both. It started mainly on the upstream sector, but it eventually covers both upstream and downstream. From those names I mentioned, some has already exited the Malaysian market, but there are still many who are operating in Malaysia until today. So they do local projects and they do projects from overseas, but carve out some of the scope and do it here.
Apa benda nak tunjuk pun? Slide.
Sorry. And then from those companies I mentioned, another tier of engineering companies, locally owned, locally founded, also entered the OGSE engineering market. So they range from services with 15 people to maybe up to 50, 60 people in their manpower in their company. So either doing work directly to the clients, PETRONAS, Shell, Exxon, and so on, or supporting the first-tier multinational engineering company I mentioned earlier. So those are that's the background. So these companies I just mentioned earlier can be considered as the SMEs of the engineering sector. So this decision 5 decades ago created the engineering capabilities in Malaysia that we have today. Going back then, all work was done manually. So you can imagine a hall or room full of those big drawing boards. They fill up the whole room. Every lines, every words were handwritten. You probably know the drawing based on their handwriting. You don't need you know that from experience. And we still use blueprints. If you can recall, some of you may know the blueprints. It smells like ammonia all the time. And imagine every small little change in the pin IDs. If somebody decides to do that, manually updating all the drawings one by one. It can be hundreds of them, or it can go to thousands of drawings that need to be updated manually by each draftsman. And at that time, the industry was still segmented. What I mean by that is engineering is done on their own, and then they produce the design package and they pass it on to the fabricator or the construction company. So you can imagine structural clashes, piping and cable tray clashes are very, very rampant during that time, and only discovered during fabrication and construction phases. Not very efficient, I must say. Then came along 2D AutoCAD, then 3D CAD came, so which means all the scale model that was done by the vendors in Cheras at that time meant that all of this can be done on your computer. So you don't longer need the scale model of the top side and jacket that you bring along every time you have a review meeting in either PETRONAS or Exxon or Shell office. So drafting became more efficient, and then 3D modeling with walkthrough capabilities meant clashes were massively mitigated. But back to what Mr. Prakash mentioned, these 50 years, what do we have? We have a lot of data. We have so much data, but tons of it. It is stored somewhere and everywhere, but it is not utilized. We'll get back to that point shortly. But going back to the question on increase in integration of digital information transformation, or as Mr. Prakash said, business transformation. The Persatuan Architect Malaysia and IEM have been pushing for the adoption of building information modeling. So it's not oil and gas doing this. I think all the industries are making sure that we go towards that, because we have no choice, basically. We have to do it. Otherwise, we'll be left behind. And in the oil and gas sector, if I am allowed to mention this PDMS smart plant, I don't think we can live without those softwares anymore. And there's a lot more software that is coming into the market. For example, a few of MOGEC members, one of them has brought in a software called PlantStream that make front-end engineering design work very efficient. You can deliver the material takeoff at a shorter schedule, which means you can decide on the FID a lot earlier. And imagine the amount of opportunity cost through time schedule shortening you can achieve doing that. And this was developed by if you know a company called Chiyoda in Japan with an IT company there. So that is being introduced in the market, but sadly the acceptance by the client is still slow. We are trying very hard to create that awareness. And we have also another MOGEC member who have helped PETRONAS in Pengerang, for example, developing their flange management program or system. You know, when EPCC contractors hand over the drawings to the client, if you just look at the piping work, you're looking at 600,000-700,000 isometrics that you need to process. If you do it manually, you can imagine the time taken to console all those information and make it into a system. But with their system that introduced through AI and digitalization, they were able to process 700 to 800,000 isometrics in a very, very short time and come up with a system that the operator can use. So imagine if you can use AI to consolidate your drawings, number one. Number two, the spare parts that PETRONAS have accumulated. I know as an EPCC company, every project we do will be at the end of it will come with a 2-year spare parts list. We don't know where those spare parts goes to. And imagine if we can manage, consolidate, and track them. I think there's a lot of savings there that can be done. There's so many other experience that I would like to share, but I think for now I'll stop here and I'll pass it back to you, Stas.
Thank you, Chair Rashid. Can I ask Dr. Fadzil, right, for a slightly different perspective? I think we've heard about the differences between the aspiration being set on the business value or the digital innovation, and Chair Rashid shared some challenges on the between the setting the objective for innovation or having these digital solutions, but then the adoption by the users. Dr. Fadzil, how about from academia perspective? What do you see as some of the gaps between the academic research and practical implementation of technologies and solutions, specifically for capital projects, when it comes to the industry users?
Okay, thank you, Stas. Well, as the only academician in the panel, I would expect this question to arise.
Surface.
Okay, so well, thank you to the organizer for inviting me to be one of the panelists. I think it's a great honor for me to become one of the panelists among leading practitioners in the industry, Mr. Prakash and also Abd Rashid. Okay, it's a great honor. So I think when they talk about the gap, academic research and practical implementation, I have to agree there is a gap. Why there is a gap? Because there is a different aspiration, objective, and also the time frame of academia and industry. When we talk about academia, we are talking about KPI in terms of publication, research grant, student supervision at the master and PhD level, in which the time frame is important, but not really critical as what we have in the industry. So when we talk about industry, we are talking about project delivery. Mr. Prakash have earlier mentioned about business transformation. So time frame is very critical and cost profit become the key issue. Resource constraint is another key issue that need to be addressed. So there is a different expectation between the two parties. So definitely there is going to be a gap. So on top of that, when we talk about the context of digital enablement within CPM, we are talking about cross-discipline research work. On one end, we are talking about CPM, in which key areas like planning, budgeting, project execution, monitoring, stakeholder engagement, funding, compliance. So these are all the key areas of research within CPM. And when we talk about digital enabler within the CPM, we are talking about data management. I think the two panelists have highlighted about volumes of data that we have. So when we talk about volume of data, we are talking about area of big data analytics. We are talking about collaborative tools. We are talking about AR, VR, IoT, and so on. So getting and merging these two areas, I think, require a special breed of researchers. Those researchers that not only well-versed in digital technology, but also well-versed in the understanding of CPM. So there's going to be another part where gap arise. Because as for now, I think when it comes to academia, I think we are very discipline oriented. Okay, those people from civil more or less have been trained on project management. And those people from computer science and IT have been trained in all digital technology. And getting the two, talking to each other, coming up with solutions that are able to address the pain point of industry is another thing. So in a way, I would say over the years, we managed to bridge the gap. At the institutional level, at the national level, I think a lot of effort have been done in order to bridge the gap. I think we realize there's a gap, but most importantly, how we address the gap. So at the institutional level, we have seen, especially in Malaysia, in many universities, we are talking about internship program that have been introduced a couple of years back. So internship program is not only meant for the student per se, but it's also meant for the academia. So when academia visit their student in the industry, they're able to get some exposure on the needs and pinpoint of the industry and how this one be able to be brought back to the academia and be able to be translated into a working solution that addressing the need of the industry, not only for their own key benefit for KPI purpose and so on, but it's meant for addressing the need of the industry. We are talking about attachment, vice versa, where industry practitioner coming to the academia have what we call attachment, research attachment, and the same thing, researcher in academia have a secondment in the industry to ensure that we are talking about, we are in the same wavelength with regard to the need of each other. And we're also talking now about more engagement session like what we have today. At least we are in the same platform, understanding the need, addressing the key pain point, especially in the industry, by the academia. Because at the end of the day, the essence of the whole thing is how we're able to really apply a very structured method and discipline and principle of academia in order to address the pain point. Although we acknowledge there is what we call time is of great asset industry. But at the same time, we talk about the available method and so on, how academia be able to contribute accordingly into the whole thing. In short, if you ask me, I'm positive. I've seen many effort at the national level, at the organizational level, that leading into a close collaboration for both parties to really communicate, to open up, to ensure that we are able to have a win-win arrangement and collaboration. So let me stop for now, and I pass back to you because I think along the way we can have many more discussion, especially on a particular case study, successful case study on how the cooperation work between the two. Okay, I'll pass back to you, Stas. Thank you.
Very clear. Thank you, Dr. Fadzil. I really like all the points that you have shared so far, and I'll gradually move us into the second round of today's discussion. And just as I do that, a quick reminder that the participants can submit questions. So I will try and spend some time on this at the end of round 2 and round 3, time permitting. So please do write them in the Q&A box, and others can also upvote them or send reactions so that I know which ones to cover first. Yeah. Prakash, you already mentioned a few challenges with deploying digital Some parts of the business don't have enough data. Some parts have too much and don't know what to do with it. What has been your approach in solving these at PETRONAS, and any learnings that you want to share that the industry partners can learn from?
Okay, thanks for the question. Let me start by saying that, we started our journey with transformation within the operating facilities, and it was a challenge. Data was a challenge. Getting engineers to start working with the digital space was a challenge. And then identifying the use cases that we wanted to work on in the capital project space, that was also another challenge. And we found similar challenges when we started working in the capital project space. But it was a little bit more strenuous in the capital project space, largely because while, and as Abd Rashid has put it, there's a lot of data, but they're very unstructured. They're in the form of PDFs, they're in the form of documentation. And one of the biggest issues that we had was to actually convert that unstructured data into structured data. So, because once you are in a structured space, then it becomes a data point, which then you can use it to actually assess, analyze, and then make corrective improvement. This has been a huge task for us to actually, make that visible, because once it becomes visible, I mean, you look at project reporting, for instance. Project reporting is a monthly affair. A report comes out, says, okay, this is the state of project, whether it's in engineering or construction. This is the state of project. By the time it comes out, a month has passed, right? Or weeks has passed, and then you want to take corrective action. It's not just a lagging indicator; it's a very, very lagging indicator of the project status. You want to be able to actually bring that into a bit more real time. Not real time, but even a week would be good enough. But that means that whether you're in engineering or procurement or constructions phases, you actually need that to turn into data rather than documents. It's driving project by data rather than by documents. And in order to support that, there are all of the systems that need to be in place. The reporting system needs to be in place. There needs to be a good supporting engineering management system. Abd Rashid talked about the EDMS that we utilize as a basis in the whole of PETRONAS. And as long as there's that single source of truth for engineering data, and then later on for construction data, we have another reference place, then it becomes a lot easier for us to actually be able to be aware of project progress. Now, what are the challenges over here? I think I would say 2 or 3 major challenges that are there. One is, of course, the cost of it, and maybe we'll have a discussion about that. But how do you ensure that the players in that space, I think the bigger players, right, Toyo, Technip, Orly, those guys, the multinational players, they already have this. In fact, they leverage on the systems to actually drive their productivity numbers up, efficiency numbers down, cost efficiency numbers up. So they can actually do more with less. So, their productivities are high, and they have good systems to actually manage lessons learned and be able to feed that back into subsequent projects. So they actually drive quality up as well in that process. So there is a little bit of an initial cost that needs to go in, but instead of boiling the ocean with lots of digital gadgets, I go back to business transformation. If I'm going to drive cost efficiency, I'm going to drive visibility in project transformation, then I just need a select set of data. I don't want to boil the ocean with collecting everything. just selected ones that actually help me drive cost efficiency. It drives risk management. It drives schedule acceleration or schedule adherence or acceleration. So there is a cost perspective of this that we need to manage. There's a cultural resistance. Maybe that's the second thing, right? The project space has been there for years on end, doing things in the same way that they've been doing. Now we're starting to see an increase of adoption, but it's still slow. We do find that there is resistance to that change, to say, okay, let's move into, say, BIM, we move into 3D walkthrough systems. We do find that cultural resistance, and both internally and externally, we find that cultural resistance to actually say, okay, let's do things differently because it's better, the results are better. And the third item that we find as a concern is integration. There are lots of systems out there that are being used by different companies, by different engineering contractors, by different construction companies. And how do you integrate all of that information to one place? Ideally, whether you're the owner, the contractor, subcontractor, or supplier to that systems, you should have only one single source of information, and that should be visible to everyone. There is a program called CFOS, Capital Facilities Information Handover System, and that's one of those things that we want to say, okay, can we have that single piece of information so that there is no loss in translation, in documentation? That's one of those things that we also want to track. I think there's three areas, right? That high initial cost, the sort of cultural resistance that we need to overcome, and the integration between different systems. Those are three areas that I think are major hurdles in actually getting transformation initiatives in capital projects. Back to you, Stas.
Thank you, Prakash. Chirshit, how do the EPC companies see this? I think Prakash mentioned project reporting as one of the areas or one of the use cases, for example. In order to get the data in a structured format that allows any digital application or solution to read it and interpret it, it needs to come in a consistent format. There cannot be 20 different ways the data is submitted into a project command center, because the project command center would never work. And for most players, that means changing the way they collect and report the data, which in most cases will lead to some extra investment required. So how do the EPC companies see this when a company like PETRONAS, or Shell or any other operator comes in with these additional sets of requirements? Do they see value in it for them as well? Or do they see this as something that kind of the owner needs to lead and they need to follow? What is the other side of the fence saying? Oh, Chirshit, cannot hear you. No, still nothing.
Okay.
Yes, perfect. You're on.
Okay. Let me try to address the question in this manner. Mr. Prakash mentioned there are two tiers of engineering EPC companies. You can call them engineering companies in short. So you have the multinationals. They are able to adopt digital transformation very quickly. For example, if you talk about the expensive softwares that we use for delivery of projects that cost, $50,000 per license, they can buy a few hundred and keep it in their head office, and then their subsidiaries, anywhere they are in any part of the world, can just access it internally. So they adopt this, and clients drive those requirements, and they can adopt very quickly. But then you have the smaller SMEs, the companies that I mentioned earlier. It is more difficult for them to follow what the clients wish them to do, because they don't do big capital projects, and probably they just do a segment of engineering and maybe some small project construction management type scope of work. So it is, you have to look at it from different angle. It is not a one solution fit all. And in Malaysia anyway, you have different level of projects. You have the smaller ones and you have the bigger ones, and then it goes in cycle. I recall, at least on the downstream side, Kerti Paka, there was a huge amount of activities in the late 80s, early 90s, and then everything went quiet. We lose people just left. And then in the year mid-2000, Pengerang suddenly came up, and we were scrambling for people, and we're still scrambling for people until today. But at the end of the day, we must always remember that engineering software does not substitute experience. Experience still is very, very valuable. So, and it takes time to train people. It takes time to make them become competent. When we bid for PETRONAS project, for example, there's a requirement, its lead engineer must be at least 10 years, and then more senior project management type, maybe longer than that. But I feel with digital transformation, this time taken for somebody to be competent should be shorter. With access of information, now everything is at your fingertip, compared to when I started working. When we order a book, it takes a few months to get, because you have to order it through a bookshop in London, and then if you live in Miri, Sarawak, it takes even longer to get there. So now you can just order it online, and it comes to you very quickly. So training is, and this is where we need to work closely with academia, and Dr. Fadzil mentioned this, so that we continue to have the people, because without the right people, whatever digital transformation that you introduce, it doesn't work. So much more that, our OGSE industry, or the oil and gas industry, is a very self-regulated industry, and everything is based on international standards. So people can move around very quickly. So if you don't keep them here, they can just go away and never come back. And even now we are facing all these talent shortages. So in very quickly, I feel everybody wants to embrace this digital transformation, but the SMEs, and we need to develop the SMEs in this country so that they can, in turn, go outside and do work overseas and follow PETRONAS wherever they go, for example. But they cannot do it on their own. They need help to get access to the engineering software, which I mentioned earlier is very expensive. And then another area which I would like to bring into the discussion is whether we can sit down with the client, and this collaboration is very important, where we need to have a more fairer contractual terms, better payment milestone, and get help for the SMEs to get better fundings. We want to keep the multinational engineering companies in the country, but at the same time, we want to develop the SMEs, because the ecosystem is very important. And the other thing is, do not impose softwares, one software fits all. What I mean by that is, for smaller projects, you don't need the expensive software. You can go using a simpler software. But sometimes the ITV already clearly mentioned, for a small project, you have to use smart plan, for example, which is very expensive. I hope I'm allowed to mention the name. And then another area which, whatever digitalization platform you use is the challenge that contractors have handling local authorities in Malaysia when we do big projects. These are things that are not discussed openly. When a project is given to an EPC contractor, the client will say, okay, you handle it with the local authorities. But I think there should be a closer collaboration from the owner side and the contractor side, so that we can, because some of the delays are caused by, are due to time taken to handle local authorities, because they don't understand what PETRONAS wants to do. I experienced this in Pengerang. When we went to the local authority at that time, they were stationed in Kota Tinggi. The only job that they have done before are schools and clinics. And you go there to say that you are building a mega ethylene plant. They just go mad. They just go like a deer staring into a headlight. And you need time to educate them. But having said that, local authorities in Paker, for example, Al-Kerti or Gebeng, they are very aware of what needs to be done when a new project is planned or started at their area of responsibilities. So there are many issues on top of digital transformation that needs to be addressed to ensure successful delivery of capital projects. I mean, we can go into IoT, clouds, digital twins, cybersecurity, AI, but probably we don't have time to discuss it in detail at this point of time. So I'll pass it back to you, Stas.
Thank you, Chair Rashid. And I like your example about the online shopping. I certainly welcome the digital transformation in that sense, and being able to order Grab food and snacks very easily. But on a more serious note, Dr. Fadzil, I think based on what we've heard from Prakash and Chair Rashid, it is quite evident that the only way a real change can happen in the industry in Malaysia is if the operators and the contractors work together and have the same objectives, right? Do you have any suggestions or maybe examples from other industries in Malaysia or any other regions around the world where something was done to help improve this collaboration at the industry level? And I also see that there's one question in the chat, which also asks for a perspective on the regulator or the government authority. Is there any support that they can bring in to help initiatives like PDX Alliance, for example, to ensure that these good practices are shared and this collaboration is fostered between the two parties?
Okay. Thank you, Stas. A very interesting question. I think it's a more or less multi-dimensional perspective in order for me to answer this question. But before I answer, I think let's look back at some statistics. I would like to share some statistics at the national level, where we are, the industry in Malaysia, because the last couple of years, we have been talking about IR 4.0. In fact, we have a blueprint at the national level on the adoption of IR 4.0. And last year, Japan and a few advanced countries, they introduced IR 5.0. When we talk about a seamless interaction between human and machine. But before we really embark to IR 4.0, IR 5.0, where are we with regard to this metrics? So I think last year, Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry, MITI, conducted a survey among 1,375 companies in Malaysia. With regard to where are we in terms of the scale of IR 4.0, IR 5.0 adoption? Majority are between IR 2.5 and IR 3.0. So don't talk about IR 5.0. We have yet to reach IR 4.0. I don't want to go into detail what are the metrics because I don't have the time, but you get the understanding where we are with regard to the scale of the industry that have been benchmarked across the whole world. And then what are the key? And then 6 out of 10 companies are only at the basic stage of digitalization, especially SME, because Rashid earlier mentioned about SME, on how we need to have a close collaboration. But before we have a close collaboration, we need to understand what are the challenges that need to be addressed. And then less than 1 in 5 companies can call themselves digitally advanced. And let's look at what are the key issues that have been highlighted by this industry that have been surveyed by the ministry. When we talk about SME, majority of them, 62% highlighted about digital competency as the major hurdle for them to adopt digitalization. Unlike large corporation, only 38%. And then large corporation, one of the main issue is organization buy-in. That is 52% by large organization, but very small number of SME cited this reason. I believe SME, I think they are more agile, they are more small, so they are be able to move faster. And then costing is another big hurdle. Mr. Prakash have highlighted about costing again and again in today's session. So in a way, let's look at the whole spectrum on how we're able to address the challenges. So we can see that we need to really help our SME. That's why when you look at the national level, there's a lot of grant have been offered by ministry. I just want to share, late last year, we have UTP involved with Produa. It's totally a different industry, not oil and gas industry, but it's an automotive industry on vendor enablement program. So how Produa, because Produa, we are talking about very large, huge corporation. But Produa, for them, in order to be really move forward with the digital agenda, they also need to ensure all their vendors are on the same page. So in this particular program, we partner with Produa. We look into a number of selected vendors on how we're able to really address their pain point. We're able to address their digital culture. We are talking about training, upskilling, reskilling. We are talking about coming up with solution in order to improve operational excellence. So it can be multi-dimension. Where the funding will come from? I think there's a very big question. A lot of people say, oh, we can have a very big idea, but where the funding will come from? There is a funding at the national level offered by the ministry that could be applied by both academia and industry. But they put a constraint over there. I think there need to be a partnership with the university, and then university need to have more or less a very detailed timeline, a very detailed framework, and so on. But I would say we have a few successful case study with regard to this collaboration. But definitely, I think we need to start small. We need to start somewhere rather than not doing anything. I would say at the national level, that we have funding available, but with regard to case that I've highlighted earlier on the Produa enablement vendor program, I think is truly an amazing partnership between academia, big organization, big corporation, and also SME on how we're able to really address and ensure SME be at par with the large corporation. Because SME, one of the key hurdles for them is the costing. The second one is on the capital, technical expertise, and so on. I think Rashid have highlighted earlier on the software. Agree, software is very expensive. To get a license for one software, I don't want to mention name, but I think people well aware to get license from one software, it can reach a few thousand, and in fact, it can reach up to a few 100,000. So we also have arrangement at the university level where we're able to use academic license. So because I think one of the good thing of academia is that we can park our licensing fee under the research collaboration. So we're able to have, I think, a lesser, we have this incentive. So we're able to acquire the license at the lesser cost as compared to commercial license. But we are able to use this particular license in order to address the pinpoint, in order to come up with a solution that able to benefit the industry. I think these are the kind of things that we have been engaging with SME, with large corporation also, in order to address their pinpoint, especially to bridge the gap when we talk about digital transformation. So, well, we need to do more, definitely. And then we need to more or less engage more. I think that's the key word. So at least we're able to understand what are the key pain points, and then we are able to leverage. In fact, in university, we have equipment, facilities, lab that not only meant to be used for teaching and learning, but able to be offered to our industry partner, and through collaboration and agreement, we are able to have more interesting incentive that maybe industry could use it at a really lower cost or no cost at all, depending on our arrangement. I think these are the kind of available opportunity, available facilities that we are at the academia level, we open to ensure that we're able to have a win-win arrangement in terms of collaboration that able to really address the pain point of industry, at the same time also benefit to our academia. I think I pass back to you, Stas, for further discussion on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fadzil.
Maybe
And
Stas,
Prakash?
could I just?
Please.
It's a discussion that is brilliant, right? I think what Rashid brought up about the challenges and what and Fadzil was talking about the opportunities as well. At the end of the day, we do want to elevate the SMEs in Malaysia. We've got to do that. We've got to bring Malaysia to that world stage, right? And there's no reason. I was telling Rashid and Fadzil the other day that, you know, when I went down to Pasir Gudang and I saw the Kasawari Phase 1 project, and I was standing there and I was just looking at it and I was thinking, my goodness, this was built in Malaysia by Malaysians, right? Such an impressive work that was done in Malaysia, 30,000 dead weight. We loaded it out. It was just an amazing experience that we could do this, but we were doing it, you know, and our back offices were not really digital. We did it, but we did it a painful way, right? And how do we take that and say that, look, it's not for a shortfall of tradespeople. We have some of the best tradespeople who can actually build the most fantastic things. How do we then lift and elevate that whole ecosystem up? And I know there's been work that's happening in MPM to actually do that. How do we turn Malaysia into that destination where we can actually elevate the whole Malaysian ecosystem, the engineering, construction ecosystem, bring that up to a space where we can actually compete at international level? And I think only good things will come from that, right? Just to add to what Fadzil has said, we are also looking at hosting some of these really expensive software solutions. We do need support from OGSE, from MOGEC to actually say, okay, they'll also commit resources to actually help elevate the capability. We will reduce the hurdle rate for licensing. We will do the hosting as we need to in order to elevate that process. I think this discussion is going the right way, right? Which is actually trying to elevate what the outlook for Malaysian capital project execution, engineering and execution. Lovely discussion. Thank you for the comments. I've got so much notes down, and I need to meet up with you guys separately, Rashid and Fadzil on this. So thank you. Back to you, Stas.
Thanks, Prakash. I appreciate continuing on the points that Dr. Fadzil has raised. Maybe Rashid would like to also hear from you. This is one of the questions that came in the chat, and this will gradually take us into the third round of the discussion. But what do you see as the maybe 2 or 3 priorities in order to be able to close the gaps, right? So Dr. Fadzil shared that the current maturity right now is somewhere between 2.5 and 3.0, the level of digitization, right? And how to go to the next level. So from the EPC and the contractor perspective, what do you think should be the priorities going forward to address these and get to the next level?
Difficult question. It's a tall order, but I think all of us are on the same track here. I'm so happy to hear that UTP is opening their doors for the possibility of APC or engineering companies to work with the university and use the software. I'm very pleased to hear Mr. Prakash saying that you are planning to host some of the software in PETRONAS itself, and the collaboration to make sure that this thing becomes successful, it goes without saying. And when I say collaboration, I mean collaboration between the contractors themselves. Sometimes you compete, but you don't compete all the time. And if you do compete, you compete on in a friendly manner. The other one is collaboration between the contractor and the client. Let me share you one example. When I was doing one of the brownfield project during my career, sometimes the project team within the client side that are from the operations people, operations team, and the engineering team, they don't see the same objective. They have their own priorities. I don't blame them. I used to work in operations before. We don't like the engineers coming to our location. But I think this gap needs to be bridged. Why I say that? Imagine I go into a site with 1,000 people waiting to enter the plant, and they don't issue me the work permit. 1,000 people is waiting. Time is just passed by, and I still need to pay them their daily costs. So these are issues which don't surface perhaps at the highest level within the client and contractors side, but these are issues that we need to address in addition to the collaboration between interdiscipline, collaboration between contractors and subcontractors, collaboration between client contractors and local authorities. These are gaps that we need to bridge, because with all the engineering software that you may have or introduced into the industry, without these issues being addressed, you will continue to be doing the same thing. Certain parts are efficient because you have the software, but overall, they are still get them, and probably those are reason why the statistics, as Dr. Fadzil mentioned, is low, because the whole ecosystem is not working as one. Everybody has their own silos that they look after, and this is a challenge. I hope I answered that question in one way or another. It's a difficult question to answer. I don't have all the details, but this is my perspective from a practical point of view.
Thank you, Chirshit. Prakash, maybe anything to add from your side?
No, I think Rashid captured that point. I found it interesting. I think this happened in Pengerang, right, Rashid, where we had 1,000 people waiting to get in, because I remember
Pengerang is 10 times more. Pengerang is probably about 30,000 people.
30,000. And you think about it, you're right. The contractors would still have to pay for this, and yeah, it's part of the problems that we have to solve, which is actually bring people in quickly, get them to do their jobs, get them to the job sites, make sure permits are available immediately, make sure that the materials are available. Part of what that is also addressed by one of the things that we're trying to push forward, right, which is PPM, production management. It's like looking at it as at assembly line within the construction space, right? So will you start your work? Start your work only when you have the right tools, the resources, the people, equipment, everyth's ready, engineering drawings, everything's ready, then start your work and be able to complete that work, right? It's an interesting space. We've actually done a couple of pilots in that, and it's been extremely successful. It actually drives down cost from the contractor end, being able to do things in a different way. It's counterintuitive, and because you think that you should just get a lot more work done, but it's not doing a lot more work, it's doing the right work and completing it so that the next set of activities can get done. I think that's for another discussion. I did mention about advanced work packaging as one way of actually driving productivity across, and it's what the CII is pushing for as well. We want to bring some of those ideas into the Malaysian ecosystem so that we can lift up the whole ecosystem. Like it or not, right? PETRONAS, we always say that with projects, PETRONAS is maybe 10 to 15% of that ecosystem. The rest of the ecosystem is the Malaysian ecosystem and the international ecosystem, depending on the size of the projects. And we need to actually lift that ecosystem together in order to actually deliver projects, at least on a schedule adherence, targeting the schedule and maintaining capital efficiency in all of these projects. So I completely agreed with the points. I think it opens up a lot more discussion points that we probably don't have the time to do here. So back to you, Stas.
Thank you, Prakash. And one more question came into the chat, and you actually mentioned in some of the responses a similar point on capability of people, capability of SMEs, capability of engineers to be able to use these solutions and softwares that are being introduced. Maybe Dr. Fadzil, for yourself, right? Obviously, UTP will play a role in training some of the upcoming talent, right, just through the programs that you have. But any other initiatives that maybe you want to highlight or share for the continuous development of the professionals in the industry that can help close some of these skill gaps, or just your view on how we should tackle this challenge going forward?
Okay, I think before we go into the improvement of skill gap, I think a very critical issue is that whether the people realize that they need the improvement or not. So I think what really happened in the country, based on my own experience engaging with SME, is that there is a fear factor in the mindset of a lot of SMEs, saying that, okay, whatever that we are doing now, the traditional way it works, why we need to move to the digital transformation agenda, why we need to more or less use digital tool, why we need to use a software, although we have a lot of data. Everything is still in manual, is still in a paper sheet. What is so important for me to translate this into a digital platform? Why I need to really look through in all the historical data? It does not make sense. As long as I'm able to move forward, deliver as per the expectation, why we need to move? Because I think at the end of the day, we need to look at the bigger picture. Getting people understand they need to catch up with the national, international agenda. Because I think that's why I think one of the key motivation why Produa get their vendor involved in the program is to ensure that the vendor is at par. Because if they are still at the lower scale, at the scale still at the semi or low level of digital priority, then I think it's not work in the whole holistic ecosystem. I think before we're able to move on into what we call training, upskilling, and so on, getting the people understand that they need to change, they need to embrace digital transformation, I think is a very key thing. But I would say along the way, people, university, organization have been really aggressive reaching out to SME particularly to ensure that they realize they need to move with digital transformation agenda. I think that's the first thing. And I think along the way, definitely our SME need some sort of support from the authority in order to ensure that they're able, because we have big group now. They realize that they need to move to the digitalization, but digitalization is not high in the agenda. Why? Because there are many other things that is their priority at this point of time. So getting incentive, I think along the way we may have some pilot. They are able to really involve in some pilot project. Once they realize that digitalization be able to yield them more outcome, more rewarding experience, and be able to improve their profit and so on, I think that's come naturally for them to really embrace this in totality. I think that's my answer to your question. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Fadzil. Prakash, I'd like to go back to one of the points that you actually mentioned in the beginning of the session. You spoke about solving things with digital only when there's business value to do so. Can you share a little bit about what is this strategy and what is the thinking that goes into this from your side to identify what are these problems that can be solved and enabled by digital? Because in a leadership position, you will be bombarded by feedback from various parties, departments, people, all having various pain points. I mean, sorry, this is a silly example, but my pain point, for example, is completing my timesheet. I find the system that I use very inefficient, and then I struggle with that twice a month, right? And does that warrant my organization doing a transformation and buying a new software for timesheeting? Probably not, right? So how do you separate from that noise to really pick problems worth solving? And how do you match these problems with the digital solutions? Because just like you will have a universe of problems, you will also have a universe of potential solutions, right? And if you, again, maybe a little bit controversial here, right? But if you go and talk to the software providers, they will probably try and tell you that, you know, every single software can solve every single problem, right? And then the reality is very different. So how do you make sense of all of this and really pick the battles to fight and how to decide how to fight them?
We could be here for another hour. At least I could do that for 1 hour. I'm sure Abd Rashid could do 2 hours of that, but yeah. Let's look at it, right? To pick the battles, and this is always the case, right? To pick the battles, you need to have a North Star where you're going. So because it clarifies what you want to do so that you can fight the right battles. We have been very clear in PETRONAS that the North Star for us is the ability to elevate the entire ecosystem. We need to elevate the entire ecosystem. It's not just, you know, bringing PETRONAS. As I said it just now, right? PETRONAS is maybe 10% or 10 to 15% of the entire project ecosystem. The rest of the ecosystem is a Malaysian ecosystem or international ecosystem. And we do a lot of work locally. So we need to elevate together. And when we elevate together, I mean, like it or not, even if you have self-interest over there, elevating that local ecosystem is going to feed back to PETRONAS. Because you have contractors who are more capable, who are able to do the jobs better, productivity goes up, schedule gets improved, and schedule is usually on the top of mind for a lot of these projects because you usually commit a first gas date or a first gas date with or you know, an RFSU date, which says, okay, here is when we're going to go into production. And so the finance guys are already looking at that, right? So when are you going into production, right? So because that's when it doesn't become a cost, but it becomes a revenue generator at that point. So schedule is usually something that we are very, very focused on. And you say you take that as an aspiration, we're going to lift up the entire ecosystem. What should we do to actually lift up the entire ecosystem? We recognize that there is a capability gap, both at a corporate level and individual level, that we need to resolve, not just out there, but also internally, to say, okay, how do we leverage on this? So we need to actually elevate that. And lots of discussions about how to do that, but let's just talk about capability that we need to elevate, so that the people who are the experts on the ground, the workers, the trades, crafts people can actually do their job better. We need to have clarity, and that's just broad. Broadly, we need to elevate the capability. Then we look at the phases of the project, right? From engineering for us, even at concept level, we're looking at how do we actually digitize this? How do we make it smarter so that we actually get the right project through the system? So at early concept level, all the way into late FEL 2, FEL 3, how do we get engineering done correctly so that when you actually end up with a feed deliverable, it's the best possible feed, right? We've heard enough number of complaints that your feed has so many hold points, right? Which then causes the EPCC contractor to have an enormous number of problems because they're waiting, okay, what do I do for those hold points? We need to have a best-in-class feed. We need to then transition into construction, and how do you improve construction efficiency? How do you speed up the construction process? We know that we can do it. We know that we can do it better. You now have a set of tools, digital tools, that will help to speed it up. Granted that the market is full of people, and you've just pointed it out correctly, the number of people who knock on our door and say, this will solve all of your construction problems. This will solve all of your engineering problems, right? We have no end of that. I get those knocks every month that come to us, and I have to tear them to pieces. Honestly, I'll be very brutal because they just come out and they say that they've got this digital tool, and part of what they have is the ability to look at us and say, well, you don't know what I've got, so I'm going to lord it over you because you don't know what I've got, and here's some fancy, wonderful, colorful charts and stuff that actually says that, we're doing a good job. And so the elevation of capability becomes important, because without that capability, without that knowledge or understanding of what do you need within the engineering space, within the construction space. We have a mantra that we use from NervCentre. We call it domain-led, digitally enabled. That's our recurring mantra. We use it everywhere. It needs to be driven by the engineers, not driven by digital. It needs to be driven by engineers who understand. Unfortunately, they have to understand the two spaces. They need to understand the engineering space, the construction space, but they also need to understand the digital space. And that's how we can actually bring that whole ecosystem forward, right? From our side, we're engaging with the OGSE people, with MOGEC. A lot of the solutions that we're coming out, we're saying, let's do this on stewardship. So we will take the hit, we will take the cost for it, so that we will provide access to the software, the solutions, and we'll capture those success stories. We'll try and get the contractors and subcontractors ecosystem to actually come together and elevate the capability. Trainings will be conducted for free, and we'll introduce them to what could be the art of the possible in digital transformation without forcing things down their throat. I do take comments about Encik Rashid was saying that, be careful about putting things into the ITB, and I really would like to have that discussion with him about where and how and how best to do this, while being cognizant of that North Star aspiration. We want to lift an entire ecosystem. right? So there needs to be commitment from us. There needs to be commitment from the players as well to say that we are all come in this together to actually lift up the ecosystem. Yeah. Back to you, Sas.
That's an excellent answer, Prakash. Thank you so much for this. Churchit, Prakash said you can probably speak about this for 2 hours. We don't have 2 hours, but we do have 20 minutes. Can I maybe ask for a comment on what was just said, and maybe also try and define what is that North Star vision for the players? Is that similar for as to what Prakash shared, or any different?
No, I think he said it very well. We have no choice, actually. We need to adopt this. We need to use the tools that we have now, but use it efficiently. I mean, I told you the history about how we did work before, line by line, word by word, handwritten. One change in the PIN ID, 1,000 drawings is affected. That's why you don't see that many clouds in new engineering drawings, whereas before, the clouds of changes are everywhere. And then at that time, you get confused, which revision drawings are we at now? And people at site do not know whether they have the latest one. We still have that problem today, despite the digitalization, but it's lesser. We've mitigated it to, quite a large extent. We need this, but at the same time, I mentioned earlier, experience of the individual engineers still matters, and the feed of people going into the industry, we need to maintain that. I'm referring to the oil and gas industry. Academia and the industry needs to work together. I'm very happy to hear UTP has incentives for us to consider to work together. And the training needs to be provided to the people that needs it. And collaboration is very important. And when I say collaboration, it is up at all levels. Number one, the collaboration between interdiscipline when we are doing the project. Sometimes they don't talk to each other. That's why you have gaps in the design. Collaboration between the engineering companies and the fabricator and the contractors when throughout the duration of the project. I tell you an example. Engineers, when they are in the design office, they think they're doing very well because they're not being challenged. They are in the office. When are they challenged? When the drawings goes to site, when the contractors start to build things and they say, hey, this is not here, this is not there, there's a gap here, there's a gap there. And then they complain, the contractors do not know how to read drawings. But actually, that collaboration must start from the design office. When I was doing EPC projects, we made sure we have the construction managers during the design stage. And as much as we can, the clients always come to our design team, and then they monitor the progress. But then I always believe that the client also must understand engineering. The client must understand construction management, procurement management. Only then we can sit together and address or mitigate problems before they actually happen. I tell you one good story about a project that we did in Kerteh for one of the gas plants. It was a brownfield. We were struggling to make sure when 1,000 workers goes out for lunch, they come back, because sometimes they don't come back. So what did we do? We sat down with the plant manager. We sat down with the project manager, project team. We said, we provide them lunch. Lock them in. Do not let them leave the site. We even gave them cigarettes to smoke. but then some of them became cheekier. Oh, we want this Marlboro as a brand, and we say get lost. You know? So these are simple things, maybe a kampong way of thinking, but it works. So it has to be a common understanding between all parties involved. The leadership in that particular project must sit together and try things that maybe appear silly, but if it works. And in addition to that, you know, the measurement of progress, the use of digitalization, engineering software, work together with traditional way of doing project delivery. So that's my take from a very practical point of view. But I have to say it has worked, and things may have changed, but I think they have not changed that much as far as being at the construction site or fabrication site is concerned. Back to you, Stas.
Thank you, Chirshit. Dr. Fadzil, maybe if we zoom out a little bit now from the oil and gas industry, or at least the core business of oil and gas, I see one question in the chat that I really like, and it's a little bit outside the topic for today, but I want to ask it anyway, and I hope that's okay. But based on what you gentlemen have discussed in terms of the challenges and some of the strategies and approaches to address these challenges, is there any parallels or any learnings that can be applied to the energy transition as we move to a more sustainable world? So any lessons from digital journey or digital transformation journey that can be transferred to a different kind of transition, which we all are moving towards in the world, is a transition to a more sustainable and a more green world for new energy projects within the industry, but also outside. And I know this is a little bit tricky. Apologies for that.
Okay. I think I would like to highlight again what have been highlighted by Prakash earlier about the digital transformation versus business transformation. At the end of the day, we have to look digitalization as an enabler. I think let us make clear on that. So although we are going to move into energy transition, CCUS, many other things, at the end of the day, what will be the role of digitalization? Digitalization need to be understood as a enabler. I think I would like to. I'm very excited with the example given by Abd Rashid earlier. A very kampong style solution. You don't need a really high investment, but at the end of the day, it works. It's very practical. Because based on my own experience, we have a corporation come to see us, have a very big agenda on digitalization. But at the end of the day, when we look through their business philosophy, the business need, they don't need to go into high-end digital solution. What is needed is only like an on-the-shelf solution, cheaper than a really high-end consultant. I think at the end of the day, I just mentioned to them, okay, you don't need this kind of solution because based on whatever that you have, your operation and so on, whatever is there on the shelf is more than sufficient. I think to relate back to the context of CCUS and many other things, energy transition and so on, I think at the end of the day, what is the need? Is there a strong need for us to more or less use a very specialized digital solution? And at the end of the day, I always believe that digitalization is just an enabler. And we have seen many new technology like blockchain and so on be able to be incorporated. And I think one of the important things that have been mentioned by the panel is about data. We have a lot of data. When it comes to oil and gas industry, I think we are a bit slow. I have to admit. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Prakash. I think we are a bit slow in terms of the data analytics infusion, data analytics adoption, and so on. I would say when it comes to the new energy transition and so on, first thing first, I think we have to look There is a lot of historical data available that we could learn. We could more or less understand the pattern, and from there be able to address all the what you call all the trending and so on. First thing first, getting the people ready, getting the infrastructure ready. And nowadays, I don't think we need a lot of heavy investment on infrastructure. Cloud is available. As long as you have some, I would say, sufficient capital investment on the cloud subscription, I think that this should be enough as a start. I think there's a few key things that I would like to highlight. And I think one of the interesting thing when I scroll down on the question is about uncertainty in future career paths associated with digital ecosystem. I think that's a fear factor. When you invest on digitalization, upgrading and reskilling your manpower, they are going to run away. I think we cannot avoid discussing on that fact. In fact, I think it's also happened to my research group in UTP, because in UTP we have a lot of consultancy project, and we treat consultancy not like research, because consultancy is a very short time frame. We have a dedicated team. We have our dedicated stack programmer, dedicated data analyst, and we pay them equivalent to the industry rate. But still, they've been pinched by NUS, they've been pinched by our colleague in Australia, Hong Kong, and so on. They are moving away. I think we cannot avoid that. But because of that reason, you don't want to invest in digitalization, I think is a very wrong reason. I think we have to be open on this. Definitely on our part, while we do it, we recruit more and more. At the end of the day, I think, well, it's good for them. It means that we are doing a great job. Whenever we train them, they got a better offer from Singapore, from Australia, and so on. It means we are doing the right thing. So our talent have been pinched by our counterpart, but in a way, I think, look at the bright side. It make things work, but I think more opportunity to train and retrain many more people to come into the whole ecosystem. Don't worry to invest in digitalization. I think that's a key point from me. Go back to you, Stas. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fadzil. And I think as we move to the closure of the session, there's just one other question in the chat that I would like to ask. So we spoke a lot about capital projects today, and the nature of capital projects is that they always have a start and they always have an end. And even the longest and the largest projects, they may take 4 or 5 years, but inevitably they come to an end and they go into the operations phase. And you could also argue that the operations phase also has a start and an end, right? But the horizon is a lot longer. So in ops, we're talking about 20, 30 plus years, right? Some of the facilities that have been constructed in Malaysia, in the 80s are still running and still producing and still refining, etc. Right? So I want to just ask one question with respect to operations side of the business. Prakash, maybe to yourself, digitization generally implies that you are doing something with data, you're collecting data, you're processing data, right? It's something new. Some of these facilities have been designed and have been constructed 20, 30 years ago. I mean, I remember myself going to a platform in the North Sea, an offshore platform. This was probably about 10 years ago, but it was still running a Windows 95 computer, which not only you cannot really buy it anymore, but the Microsoft have explicitly said we're stopping any kind of support for this system anymore, because there's few people alive in this world that still know how to use it, right? Okay, a little bit of a joke here. But with this kind of mismatch between the reality of the operations and the equipment, and the sensors and the infrastructure, digital infrastructure, right, that it uses, and the infrastructure that some of these modern solutions need, how do you bridge that gap, and maybe some of the success stories, Prakash, that you have observed in PETRONAS on this?
Yeah, thanks, Tas. I told you we had a mantra, which is domain-led, digitally enabled, and we really stick to that very, very strictly. So we put engineers in front. In fact, we try and get these engineers to there was this joke that one of my leads posted on our private WhatsApp group yesterday that, Ku, who's my lead for Assoc, she posted this nice chat. It says, AI will not replace people. And then there was this byline: people who know how to use AI will replace people who do not. Right? So it's not AI replacing people, but people who know how to use AI will replace people. I thought it was a nice comment, right? We do need to lift the capability. It's the capability of the engineers. I'm more for capability of the engineers who actually understand the two worlds. Right? You talked about operations and the lack of data for some of the older facilities. I come back to the mantra. It's domain-led, digitally enabled. We have a second mantra, which is value obsession. And we are obsessed with value. Because at the end of the day, I still need to report to my finance people that I am delivering value, and it is quantifiable. It is impacting the P&Ls somewhere. And so that aids me in a lot of ways, because I can go to a facility and assuming that facility is generating a tremendous amount of value, it's a lot easier for me to say, hey, look, for this particular facility, I can justify spending an X amount of dollars because the value returns is going to be this much. It all comes down to ROI, right? And me, it is a risk for me because I have to say, well, here's the investment cost. It's going to be a bit sizable, but I've got a good NPV. IRR thresholds are good. I can actually deliver on this value within a stipulated period of time. It is something that you have to take. It's a risk that you have to take. But that's how we do it. Right? So, and then we get the engineers to get on the ground and say, okay, how do you bridge that gap? Right? So once you've got past the financial hurdles, then it becomes a lot easier. But the space of what we can do in digital is tremendous. I mean, just to give you an example, we've had one facility where we had a particular equipment which we couldn't really figure out how to optimize. 2 years ago, we pulled 300 million data points from that particular equipment, and pulled it out, sent it to the cloud, and we were able to get great models out within 10 minutes. Right, that's the power. You've got infinite power, infinite storage. By the way, the cost can also be infinite. So if you're not careful with it, right? So, but we were able to get the models out within 3 months. We were able to optimize that, something we haven't done in more than 20, 30 years. We were able to optimize it. We were able to deliver additional product from that company, sizable value gains. In fact, when we calculated the returns on investment, it was a bit of a joke because we basically paid off for it within a week. Of that. So if you couple those two things, right? So like it or not, we are governed by our finance brothers and sisters who are on the lookout for making sure that a company is always in a better state next year than it was today. We're trying to be progressive all the time. So you need to hit that value numbers and be very critical about the value numbers up front. And the only people who can tell you that this is a good thing to do, by the way, are engineers. Right? The engineers on the ground who say, this is good because it's going to help me with productivity, with cost efficiency, with risk management, with clarity of my schedule, all of the things that is needed to be done in a capital project space. So that outlook, starting outlook is saying, let's talk about dollars and cents in the beginning. Digital becomes an enabler subsequently, right? So how do I improve some business metrics? And that's how I would go about doing this stuff. Back to you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Prakash, for this. Any final remarks, maybe Rashid or Dr. Fadzil from yourself? We've got, I think, probably 2 or 3 minutes left in this main session, so would like to give you the opportunity.
Can I start first?
Please do.
Yeah, I just
Yes,
want
please.
to
Yeah.
I just want to add on to Dr. Fadzil's point on training. I just want to share when I was running Toyo Engineering Malaysia, what we did was we brought into Malaysia retired engineers from of our head office in Japan. They are all different discipline: process, mechanical, process piping, E&I. They sit in our office here. They train, they check, make sure all the qualities of the design are gone through very meticulously, and that worked very well. And I'm very pleased to say that my successor in the company is doing the same, expanding the access to expertise, not just from Japan, but also from India and other countries where Toyo is operating. And I'm very pleased to also update that one of our member company who has access to Chiyoda in Japan, for example, is trying to do the same. But it requires it is costly. You bring a person here, you need to pay his salary, accommodation, some incentive. But it is less costly than bringing in somebody who is coming here with their whole family and schooling and so on, because these people retired, the children are all grown up. So I thought I would like to share that. But people still leave. They still leave, and you have to accept that, and you have to keep on training. As long as they still stay with this, of course, I get disappointed at the time. I mean, there was one point where we thought hiring all ladies in one department will solve that problem, but eventually all the ladies left. So it is no guarantee. And then the other thing that I want to mention is this training and upskilling is a continuous process. I mean, somebody like me, I still need to learn about ESG. Still need to learn about cybersecurity. Still needs to understand the requirement of scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, where those terms were not there, maybe 5 years ago. And when you do projects, these are all additional scope that you need to consider when you do projects today. And 5 years from now, other things may come in, and you just need to upskill yourself so that these are all being considered in your delivery of your work. I thought I'd just share that with all of you.
Excellent. Thank you, Chair Rashid. And Dr. Fadzil, just the last remarks from you.
Okay, I just take 1 minute on this. I think throughout today's session, we have been talking about collaboration. I would say we have started on an interesting journey with regard to collaboration between academia, industry, SME, big corporation, different stakeholders. But I would say we are on the right track, but we should do more. We should do better. There are many available platforms now, and in fact, there are many available incentives at the national level that we could tap together in order to improve, in order to enhance our digital capability. We are talking about available incentive in terms of reskilling, upskilling, available incentive in terms of operational excellence that able to be deployed within SME, for instance, that able to join hand with the academic collaborator. I think there are many available opportunity out there that we could do together in order to have a win-win collaboration. I think that's all from me, Stas. Get back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fadzil. Fantastic. I think, unfortunately, this brings us to the closure of the discussion for today as we're running out of time. I would like to say a huge thanks to all the panelists for the fantastic discussion and the insights shared, as well as to our audience who have actively been sending the questions and keeping the discussion running. From my side, it's been a real pleasure to cover so many interesting points in the last 2 hours. and I definitely look forward to the next webinar in this series. So with this, we'll pass the word back to our MC, Dr. Ho. And once again, from my side, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank you, Stas.
Stas,
Thank you.
and distinguished panelists, for sharing your time and expert insights drawn from your vast experience. May I now invite all our participants to give a show of appreciation through emojis to our panelists and moderator for an excellent and engaging discussion today. Yes, let's show our appreciation with some emojis to our panelists and moderator. Well, we really appreciate your thought leadership, your vast experience, and your advocacy in advancing the conversation and hopefully action on digital transformation in project delivery. To our beloved audience, please spare a minute to scan the QR code that will be now displayed on your screen. The PDX Alliance and the organizing committee greatly values your feedback, which would help us to plan more events of relevance and value to you, our esteemed audience, in the near future. For today's event, the organizers intend to share a link of the recording so that you may be able to revisit and learn from the discussion today at your leisure. So if you would kindly scan the QR code and send us your feedback. We would like to request for all panelists and moderator and organizing committee to turn on your cameras for a brief photo session while our audience is providing the feedback, just for memory. So kindly turn on your camera. Thank you very much. So on behalf of the organizing team and all participants, thank you once again, Mr. Stas, Mr. Prakash, Associate Professor Dr. Fadzil, and Engineer Rashid for your insightful sharing. We look forward to future opportunities to engage and learn from you. And to our audience, thank you for your attention. Stay tuned to PDX Alliance and see you at our next event. Thank you and have a wonderful day all.
Thank you. Thank
Thanks
you all.
again.